Hello, true believers. This is Doc Hogg, and welcome to episode 62 of Comics and Variety. If you like this channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new videos, and for the sake of YouTube's search algorithm, please do hit the like button. Now, before I discuss LionMan, I want to briefly tell you about two indie comics that I'm backing. I'll tell you more about them and why I'm backing them after the LionMan review. The first is Seven Legions, and it is written by Michael Beacon and has a very modest fixed goal of $3,000. It is over 1/3 of the way to its goal with about 6 days left on its campaign. So let's get it the rest of the way. It is a good mix of science fiction and epic fantasy. It is about a samurai named Hiko who has to choose between protecting his family and saving the galaxy. Alrighty, the second one is a very interesting take on a Western called Six Gun Gorilla. I think you should back this one almost based on the title alone. It is written by Brian Christgau, and it also has a modest goal of $3,000 and also has 6 days to go and also is over 1/3 of the way to its goal. So let's get it the rest of the way. I'll provide links to the Indiegogo campaigns in the description below, and we'll talk more about them after LionMan. Okay, moving on to LionMan. You can actually purchase LionMan online and receive a copy pretty quickly at 3 websites. One is Indie Planet, the other is Comic Central, and the other is Comixology. I will provide links to each in the description below. And you can get a PDF copy of LionMan for only $2.99 and a print copy for $6.99 plus shipping. Alrighty, I've been meaning to review this indie comic, which is written and illustrated by Rick Hanna. I'd been meaning to do it for a while and just kept procrastinating. And now I'm kind of glad I did because I'd forgotten a lot of it, and because I procrastinated, and I had to go back and read it again. And it turns out I liked it even better the second time. For starters, Rick Hanna knows how to tell a story. The plot here is pretty easy to summarize, which I always like. A ghetto youth named Skylar will become the superhero Lion Man to fight the sinister hyena cult. And I do mean ghetto. Skylar is growing up in Anacostia, which is part of Washington, D.C. I've lived in or near D.C. for the last 15 years. And I still would rather not go into Anacostia without a SWAT team. And this is another thing Hanna is quite good at, setting up protagonists that we can root for, that we can identify with. Skylar wants to better his situation. He's a teenager who wants to go to private school. He's lost his dad, his mom is struggling to put food on the table, and they are surrounded in their neighborhood by hoodlums. And Skylar is kind of angry about his situation. Another character that is quite likable is this Englishman named Sir Michael Baker, who, when we first meet him, is walking in the park in Anacostia. An Englishman in Anacostia. Well, that is best explained with an analogy.
Now. Harold Strutter, CIA. Where were you when I didn't need you?
Got obvious you weren't coming out front. Not even with that clever disguise you're wearing. White face in Harlem. Good thinking, Bond. Let's get out of here.
Now, Sir Michael is the very gentlemanly sort who, as it turns out, doesn't take any crap. Indeed, he has some type of what I guess are magical powers so that when these hoods actually try to shoot him, he's able to deflect the bullet with some sort of force field. Anyway, he has been driven by some force to come to Anacostia and leave this talisman in the woods. Later on, the youth Skylar sees a robbery, and he knows the hood who commits it. And the hood sees him, and knowing that Skylar could give him up, chases him into the woods and shoots him in the arm. Skylar tries to hide, and in doing so comes into contact with the talisman, and that transforms him into the superhero Lion Man. To me, that is a good origin story. It's an origin story filled with action, suspense. Skyler is worried the thugs will, find him and kill him, and it is the transformation that saves him. Now, there is a lot more to this comic, and I'm not going to give it all away here. I'm just going to recommend that you do buy it. Now, there is one criticism that I have, and that is some of the art. As I mentioned earlier, Hanna is also the illustrator on this, and overall his art is quite good. You look at some of these panels and you see a lot of detail. Obviously, he puts a lot of effort into that, and it shows. One of my favorites here is actually this street here where you see some cracks in it. He could have just drawn a street. Who would have cared? But the cracks are really a nice touch, and for me, they're really a nice touch because I Uber here in D.C., and my God, some of the streets, it's like they haven't been repaved since Nixon was in office. Come drive around D.C. for a day, and you'll see what I mean. However, Hanna's art has one problem, and it's a problem that I'm seeing in more and more indie comics, and so this is something that I'm saying not just to Hanna, but to all indie comic artists. And that is, make sure there is movement in every panel. And that's important because obviously the images in a comic don't move. By which I mean it's not a movie or a TV show. And when a panel doesn't make the images look like they're moving, it stands out and it looks awkward. For example, here is LionMan moving. Here he is supposed to be running, but it looks kind of like he is in the starting blocks at a track meet. Here he is again, clearly moving. Here it looks like he is kind of floating. And even when a character is standing still, he needs to show some kind of movement or it is, again, awkward. Here, for example, is Sir Walter moving. Here is one without movement. It just doesn't look right. Now, give a couple examples of what I'm talking about here regarding, even if the character is standing still, but you still want to make him look like he's moving. This is from Cyberfrog, and I'm using this because Ethan Van Sciver is a longtime professional comic book artist, and Cyberfrog is really, he's just standing there, but he looks like he has just come to a stop, like he's looking at himself, and so he looks like he is moving. That's how you do it. Now, I'm guessing this is not easy to do, and I don't know, and to be fair, I can't even draw stick figures. But that said, the customer is going to notice this. Now, let me give you one more example of how to do it, and this is from Lenore King. She's working on a logo for my upcoming comic books. And notice how you have these lines and a shadow on the nose. And that really makes it look like the hog here has just scrunched up his snout. And then there are the lines around the mouth here. It suggests that he has just gritted his teeth and scowled. It makes it look like there is movement, even in something as that really isn't moving like a logo. So just a few things to sum up. I would suggest that Hanna and a lot of indie comic artists really work on making sure that there is some type of movement in every panel in their comic books. I think that's really important for ComicsGate and the indie comics movement to succeed in the long run. Also, I had an email exchange with Rick Hanna, and he revealed to me that he kind of considers himself a white Hispanic, and given that LionMan deals with themes from Africa, clearly Hanna is guilty of cultural appropriation. And that is a sin. Very, very bad. How bad? Well,
not right. It's really hard to go out in public. As you can see, I'm still pulling my hair out from it, and
so combine the cultural appropriation with the good, solid plot, the characters that you really identify with, and I think you should buy LionMan, and I'm really looking forward to issue 2. Alrighty, moving on to the comics I'm backing, and in fact, while we're on the subject,
Comrades, we must not allow these monsters to continue to produce their content and live among us as equals. They must never be able to create comics, especially not this comic, 7 Legions. Did you know that Michael Beacon is a white male? And he's writing a story set in feudal Japan. That's cultural appropriation! And this print to be unlocked through stretch goals has the approval of John Malin and Ethan Van Sciver!
That by itself may be enough reason to back 7 Legions. This comic book begins with the angel Azrikal, who served the 7 Legions, and it shows a bunch of fight scenes. Then it turns out that all these scenes are a dream. It is Hiko the samurai who is having that dream, but the dream is real. This actually did happen, and Azrikal has been betrayed. He's long since disappeared, and as such, the galaxy is in peril, and it will be up to Hiko to save it. And I think really one of the best things about this comic book is the art. It is a bit unusual, but in a good way, and it has lots of detail, lots of movement, and I think that makes it worth it. Alrighty, now for the other comic that I'm backing, the preview that I've seen of Six Gun Gorilla gives us the origin story. The gorilla's parents are killed by a hunter while the gorilla is an infant. And this infant gorilla is captured by the hunter, and then the hunter loses the gorilla in a poker game to a man who will one day run a circus. This man goes by the name Professor Malloy. He trains the gorilla to be a target shooter, which of course works out nicely for his circus. Now, I don't know the full plot of this comic, but I'm guessing the gorilla's family, which is Professor Malloy and his daughter, are killed, and he goes out to seek revenge. Whatever it is, I'm guessing that it's good, because what I've seen suggests that Brian Kriskow knows how to tell a story. The origin story is told very well. It flows nicely from panel to panel, and I enjoyed it. I will note one mistake here, where Professor Malloy wins the gorilla in the poker game. He wins it with 4 of a kind, 4 queens. The guy who loses it says he has a full house, aces full, but if you notice closely, there are actually 4 aces there, which suggests that this guy doesn't know how to read his hand. And all I can say is to Brian Kriskow, who is this guy, and do you think I can get him in my next poker game? That said, Six Gun Gorilla is well worth taking a chance on, and you should back it. Again, both books have about 6 days left in their campaigns. Both are just over 1/3 of the way to their goals. And I'll provide links to the Indiegogo campaigns in the description below. Okay, that music means that it is time for Hogg's Headlines, all the news that Doc Hogg wants to report on. Dateline, Captain Marvel flies above her critics. Well, Bounding Into Comics has an article about Captain Marvel actress Brie Larson and her recent comments about her critics. By the way, if you don't frequent Bounding Into Comics for your comic book and other entertainment news, you really should. It's top-notch. Anyway, Brie Larson was being interviewed by Variety magazine, and reporter Kate Arthur asked her, "There are horrible comic fans who are rooting against it," the movie Captain Marvel, "because it had a woman lead character and because of your politics. People made YouTube videos about wanting the movie to bomb." And of course, Kate Arthur asked that question because she is a journalist. And here was Larson's response. "They did? Oh, I didn't even know. I don't have time for it, you know. The things that I have extra time to really look at are like, am I eating healthy food? Am I drinking water? Am I meditating? Have I called my mom today?" Well, of course, John Trent at Bounding Into Comics did a little research and found that indeed Brie Larson has been made quite aware of her critics.
Okay. Now, one thing I want to say, one thing I love about you is you had a great story happen recently about inclusivity and diversity in press. And I'm a white male, and I commended you completely on that. But
Thanks.
most people, when that article dropped, it was headlines that were completely taking you out of context. Like
Oh, okay.
she wants only no white men at like press junket, which is not what you were saying. And people need to read the articles to actually find out the context of what you were saying.
Yeah.
But as an actor, when you have to say something like that, do you worry about how things get twisted? And for audiences who only do read headlines, can you clarify what you were saying? 'Cause I think it's awesome what you're doing, and I hope
thanks.
that more actors do it.
I mean, it's hard for me to comment on that because I don't know what the headlines were or
Yeah.
what was said or what I said or what people think that I said. All that I know is like, what I'm looking for is to bring more seats up to the table.
Yep.
No one's getting their chair taken away. There's not less seats at the table. There's just more seats at the table.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that you're doing that, and please, I hope every actor sees what you're doing and does it more because we need more diversity. in
Thank
the
you.
press.
I appreciate that.
completely agree with
Thank you.
Now,
If you want to know more about what Brie Larson is talking about here, I did a video on it a few months ago in which I pitted Brie Larson intellectually against the economist Thomas Sowell. Yeah, I know, really a fair fight, right? But it is worth a watch in my not so humble opinion. But back to the Bounding into Comics article, I'll just say that like so many social justice warriors, Brie Larson has a little problem with telling the truth. I'll provide a link to the Bounding into Comics article and my video on Brie Larson and Thomas Sowell in the description below. Until next time, have a very nice day.
White face in Harlem. Good thinking, Bond. Let's get out of here.